Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Another episode of the business side of music here in Nashville, Tennessee, Music Dog Studios. This gentleman and I have known each other, well, for quite a while, probably, we'll say 15 years or so. Never had the opportunity to get you on the show until now, because he's a Florida boy, but he came to Nashville, and we're glad to have him here. Tim Charron is in the studio with us. He is a singer, songwriter, actor, business entrepreneur, and a booking agent.
Correct.
And probably a few other things that we're going to find out in this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's great to see you again.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Nashville and Florida, you're kind of commuting between the two cities.
Correct. I have a place in Green Hills here and a place in Boca Raton in Florida.
Being in the music business, which is better for you? Obviously, the music scene is here. Is there a music scene in Florida?
There's definitely a live music scene.
Right.
And there is a music business scene in South Florida, but nothing compares, of course, to being here. So to answer the question, Nashville for the music business, of course, is amazing. And for my personal life and my happiness and well-being,
your sanity,
Florida is perfect because I'm a beach boy.
Yeah. As long as I've known you, I've always thought that you were kind of a beach boy anyway. Let's go back to the beginning. It's a question I always ask, and our listeners would like to know. And that is, how did you get started in the business? What were your musical influences? What age did you realize, gee, this is what I want to do?
Great question. I started when I was 14 with my stepbrother and a couple buddies from high school, and we formed a band in the basement, and half of us had no idea what we were doing, but we would take lessons and everything, and up until that point, I think, but really, as far as I can remember back, maybe being 7 or 8 years old, I started to become obsessed with music. And I would totally dating myself, but I would lay in my bedroom by myself with a boombox and play tapes of, like AC/DC and all that, like all the rock and roll. And I would just lay it against my ear and just lay there for hours and hours and hours. So we started the band in the basement, and then we did, I think, 1 or 2 little like keg parties, in somebody's backyard. And then when I was 16, Mothers Against Drunk Driving in my high school, they had a concert, and they had some of the bands play, some of the high school bands, and it was life-changing because they set it up like a real concert. They had a big PA system and lighting rigs and spotlights, and so we, I had all these plans of what we're going to do for the show, and we had the Elvis's old intro.
The 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, because my mom was a big Elvis fan, so I decided that I was going to use that music for our intro. And long story long, there was, maybe 500 kids there and parents and stuff. And the first few bands went on, and it was nice, but everybody was kind of standing away from the stage. So I went up to everybody and I said, guys, when we go on, come up to the stage. So I'll never forget, I had the band kind of start, you know, I had the intro music go, the Elvis intro music go. And as soon as everybody heard that, everybody started, you know, coming up to the stage. And so I had the band start the first song, and then I came running out from backstage, and the big spotlight hit me, and all the kids just like ran to the stage and started going crazy. And I remember just that moment is just blasted in my mind. And I could see my dad and my stepmother off to the side because they were just like away from the kids, but watching, standing against the wall. And I was like, this is it. This is it. I'm done. I know what I want to do. You know?
You were hooked.
Yeah, absolutely.
You came to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Were you coming to Nashville as an artist or as a songwriter or both?
Both, mostly as an artist. And when I came, I was still pretty green as far as the real music business, you know. And I think like everybody, or most people, I came to Nashville and every 5 seconds I was like, what am I doing? My God, these people are so unbelievably gifted and talented. It's a humbling town.
Yeah. I've had that conversation with quite a few people that come to town who go, you know, I was the big fish in a small pond,
Mm-hmm.
and I come to Nashville and I find out I'm the small fish in a big pond.
Yep.
It does humble you rather quickly, especially when you go up and down like Lower Broadway and all the honky-tonks and you see the guys that they're playing for tips.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing for the tip jar and all the honky-tonks on Lower Broadway, and you're like going, these folks are amazing.
Oh yeah. When I first got here, I would go downtown and I would see people and I would just look at them on the stage at Tootsie's, and I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's made it. I would do anything to do that. And like you said, I mean, you know, you go to Starbucks and the barista is, you know, world-class guitar player, and you're like, geez, I need to take some guitar lessons or something.
You didn't give up though.
No.
You stayed and you really started to work on your craft from what I remember back in the days.
Mm-hmm.
And you started to really develop your own style at that point, I would think.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've been thinking about this lately a lot. I think it's just so incredibly important for anybody who wants to be an artist, that they start developing their own style, and that it doesn't end. It doesn't, you know, it's not something, in my opinion, that you just, figured it out. Okay, this is what my style will be. So I went, you know, I'm going through a million different iterations of what that is still, but it's fun for me. And I think, you know, if people approach it as like, oh, this is part of the art of being an artist, is, you know, playing with your, you know, figuring out who you are, figuring out who you want to be on stage, who you want to be as a songwriter, and figuring out what your image is going to be.
It's what we used to call in the record business artist development.
Yeah, artist development, correct.
Yeah, you're really developing who you are and what you are.
Right. And it seems like these days, correct me if I'm wrong, these days artist development is in the hands of the artist.
Oh, absolutely. I think the record label, one of the biggest mistakes they ever made, and I've got label execs that listen to the show, and I'm not afraid to say, because I used to be in artist development at the label.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a position that is sadly lacking. Mm-hmm. I think it needs to be in some form or manner within the business, whether it's a record company or whatever else. Because as you said earlier, you come to Nashville and you see all these cats playing, and you're trying to figure out who you are, and you don't know because you're just some young kid, still wet behind the ears, snot-nosed, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to be? And without that guidance, it's kind of tough. And that kind of gets to what we talk about on the show. It's the music business. There's the business side of it. and that craft part. And I think that is something from what I've read on you is you've understood that there is a business aspect to this industry that we're in.
Oh, very much so. It's I can only speak for myself, but it is the only reason that I've gained any kind of success is because I started to take the business seriously. And once I started, and not even once I started to take the business seriously, everything is a lag as well that I don't think people understand.
That's interesting. I've never heard that analogy.
Yeah. Like I started taking the business very seriously, but it still took a few years. And I don't mean a few weeks. I mean a few years
right.
before I guess people started taking me more seriously. You know, it wasn't automatic. Like I woke up one day and decided to take things seriously, and then I started getting all these offers and stuff. That's why it is challenging. It's very challenging to do all of this stuff yourself because, you know, you don't. It's almost like a delayed gratification because you don't necessarily get right back what you're putting out.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But yes, I do. I started to take the music business seriously, and then the more I did, the more results I got eventually, and the more I started to enjoy it. And now I love the business aspect of it.
In the studio with us today here in Nashville, Tennessee, Tim Charron. When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music. Back in the studio, sitting across the podcast table from me today here in Nashville, Tennessee, Tim Charron, a commuter between Nashville and Florida. Good to have you here. You really, that whole creation of your style, finding who you are and what you are, how did that come about for you?
Well, it's like I said, it's definitely a process, but you know, I find it fascinating because I look at a lot of other artists, and now that I'm on the other side of the music business, I get approached by a lot of artists, and I just noticed that a lot of them sound the same, and a lot of them look the same. You know, so when you nothing.
I shake my head because it's like the blonde-haired, blue-eyed singer that you see once again at all the honky tonks or the songwriting nights, the guitar pulls wherever in Nashville. It's like they've all come from the same template.
Yes, exactly. And nothing against plaid shirts. For men. Right. Nothing against, I love me a plaid shirt.
Or the baseball cap turned backwards.
Right. Yeah. Nothing against it.
But it's been done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I find it fun. I like to, I like the whole time trying to, let me say one thing behind all this for me has been, and my advice to anyone who wants to be a, singer or artist, play thousands of shows. And I mean, I started out on a bar stool, playing 6-7 nights a week for a living for about 4 years, solo acoustic. And every single time you play, you're gonna learn something about performing. You're gonna learn something about how to run your little PA system. You're gonna learn something about the way to talk to an audience in that setting, and you're gonna be tweaking what you like to play, what doesn't go over well, and that goes all back to your personal style. So every time you play, you're gonna get just a little more of a an idea of you and a sense of yourself musically, but also image-wise.
You brought up something, and I think that is such a valid point that so many artists overlook, and that's a couple things. First of all, the art of networking, what I want to talk about, but communication skills, how to communicate to the audience. One of my biggest bones of contention is an artist that gets up there and has no concept of how to communicate with the audience, and then wonders, why doesn't the audience respond to what I'm doing? Come on, clap your hands, or, shout. Everybody's doing that.
Yep.
There's really, that's not interaction though, right?
Well, it's very interesting because you see many people that don't even acknowledge that there's an audience, which troubles me very much. The audience wants to be acknowledged, but having said that, it really depends. It all depends on where you're playing. Like they say, play the room,
Yeah.
So, and I had to learn this the hard way. So, like I said, I was playing hundreds of solo acoustic gigs, started doing that all around the country. That's how I started to figure out my what do you call it? Home base, my markets, my main markets, but I was only playing solo gigs at the beginning. So I was trying to do those things and get people engaged and everything. And when you're out for fish and chips, sometimes you don't want to be engaged. So, play the room. Obviously, if you're playing a big concert for 10,000 people, they probably want to be engaged and they want to be part of the show. But if you're playing at the seafood restaurant, which I did hundreds, over 1,000 of those gigs, I had to learn sometimes, Tim, you just got to shut up and play some music and chill out. People just want to chill out and enjoy themselves.
I do agree with that. I think my only thing I would say about that is we'll go to Songwriter nights here in town. And of course, there's a ton of them all over the place. Yeah. And it irks me to no end that everybody that walks into a certain venue knows it's a songwriter's night. I mean, it's advertised as such. Monday night, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., all these songwriters are going to be there. And people sit at people sit at their tables and have conversations, and not softly, but they're trying to shout over the music. And so I think it kind of goes both ways. The artist needs to know the audience, but the audience also needs to be aware of what's going on stage.
Well, definitely when it's a Nashville songwriters night, that's definitely a different monster.
Yeah.
Where I almost feel like they should have a host or one of the writers that comes on and introduces and says, okay, this is a listening room and this is how it works.
Right. That's the key word right there. This is a listening room. Yeah. But at the same time, getting back to what you were talking about, those communication skills, that's where the artist, the performer on stage, needs to understand, for a lack of terms, they need to kind of understand their place.
Definitely. They need to understand their place. They need to understand the room that they're playing and the crowd that they're playing to. And I always in business and in performing, I'm always thinking about the audience. I always think about what does the audience want? Why are they here? I'm very fortunate that for the most part now I'm in the situation where I'm playing for big crowds and big shows and opening for national acts. So I know what those crowds want. They want to come out on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon and crack a few beers and get crazy and get loud and sing along and scream along and stomp along. So that's what I do. But if you're playing at a listening room, or if you're playing at a small venue and it's solo acoustic or a duo gig, then you've got to understand that you're pretty much there for I know everybody hates to hear it, but I did it for years. I was background music.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And, but the great thing is if you're doing those shows, and you're working your way up and then you're getting to play bigger shows but you're also doing solo shows, you just learn every single time. And that's how you figure it out. That's how you figure out, you learn by doing.
Communication skills is one thing. I think the other thing is you've gotten where you're at these days because of the ability to network. Yeah. And there's a certain art to that networking. And I'm a huge proponent of having business cards, being able to reach out to people. That's really something you've developed over the years yourself, is that art of networking.
Yes, and it's definitely an art, and it's a like you were talking about earlier. To me, there are so many facets of what we do, of the music business, and it's a craft. It's a craft. Performing is a craft. Obviously, songwriting is a craft, and networking is a craft, and the skill, and I say skill because skills, I'm a little bit obsessed with the idea of skills, right? Skills are things to me that can be practiced and you can get better at. And networking and most importantly, the actual art of communication is so important. So very important. And for networking, I think that I'll just tell everybody my mistakes, so hopefully they can learn from my mistakes. Especially when I first moved to Nashville, I thought networking meant like, you find someone who's in the music business who can make you a star, and you run up to them in Starbucks and you throw, a CD at them. I thought that's what networking was. And a lot of things I think that, at least what I thought they ended up being the opposite. And networking to me is fun now. And I kind of have a little bit of a system. So I'll just try to give people ideas of what they can borrow. So number one and foremost, I really look at it as just going out and fostering friendships with people. Because I don't really know how to say this, but the music business is like any other business in the aspect that people want to work with people that they know and that they like. And, the opposite of that is someone coming up to you at Starbucks or at dinner or something and throwing a CD in your face or just trying to pitch you. As soon as I'm sure this is happening to you like 20 times a day. When someone comes up and just isn't really interested in you as a person, but they just want to pitch you and tell you about how great they are, it's a complete turnoff. So people, please try not to do that. Try to just realize that it's a long-term game. If I realized maybe 10 years ago, that when I started to have a little bit of success, I thought to myself, nobody's getting me out of this, I heard a Bob Dylan quote. He was like, once I got my foot in the door, he was like, there's nobody in this world that was going to get me out of that door, Right. So meaning I knew that this is what I wanted to do forever. So that gives you a lot of time and a little bit of peace so that I felt like I didn't have to, after that, once I realized that, I felt like I didn't have to go and just bother people and treat it more like just fostering friendships. And for details, things that I do, because I'm doing this every day, all day now, is, if I meet someone, of course I have my business card right here. I have, and it's so easy. Get a QR code.
Right.
And I just had it printed. So here you go. Vistaprint, I believe. Had it printed. It costs you next to nothing. So you meet somebody and you're like, hey, just put your phone up to it, put your camera up to it, and then it populates all of your info, your socials, all of that stuff. And it also captures their info. But then what I'll do is I will go into, if I meet someone and I want to foster a relationship with them, I'll use the power of social media. And I will sit down at my desk, and I will go onto the different social media platforms that I use, and I'll find that person and I'll send them a request. LinkedIn is a good one as well. I use Facebook. Facebook has gotten me, so much business. It's incredible. But literally, if you're watching, listening, the next time you meet somebody, go and get on their social media, and then don't send them anything. Don't blast them anything. Maybe, like some of their posts, right. Comment on some of their posts. Maybe send them a message. Actually, I did this the other night. I met someone in Delray, a label executive, and he launched one of the biggest artists in the world right now. And we met, and so I got him I talked to him while I was there, and I was like, hey, I'm on your Facebook, and he's like, oh yeah. And so the next day I was like, hey, it was great to meet you. I'm in Delray a lot, and he's like, oh great, yeah, let's get together and meet. So it's a very simple thing that you can do. But whenever you meet someone, use the power of social media. Get on their social media, comment on their posts. Tell them that you like their puppy dog, and
it's giving instead of taking
right.
At that point, and you're starting to develop that art of networking and building a relationship. And I like what you said about LinkedIn, because I have actually probably in the last 2 or 3 years have seen more connections made through LinkedIn than I have on anything else. And I mean good connections, industry leaders, industry experts. And I've developed some really good relationships with those people over the years. Facebook is Facebook. Mm-hmm. I get friend requests all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And honestly, I probably delete 95% of them, because unless it's somebody that that I knew, it's somebody that I know that's more than one person, because why do you want to be my friend? It's the same thing on LinkedIn. Why do you want to connect with me on LinkedIn?
Right.
If it's networking and you want to build a relationship, I'm all about it. Mm-hmm. I'll be more than glad to help you. And hopefully in turn you can, help me with some things. But if you're just like, gimme.
Yeah. And absolutely. Specifically for artists who are trying to make a name for themselves, right? I would only add people if I have met them, and doing things like going to panel discussions and conferences and things like that. I could talk forever about those things, but conferences, number one, where you go and you pay to play. Everybody, send me some hate messages. This is going to be a hot topic.
But guess what? If you don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
Okay, if anybody's wondering how to get out of the bar scene, you pay to play. And you pay to play at conferences. I've been doing this for 8 years, and you go to these conferences. So shout out to FFEA. I'm on the entertainment committee for FFEA. It's Florida Festivals and Events Association. So for the past 8 years, I have paid for a membership. I've gone and I've paid to showcase. I have paid all of my band members to go to Orlando or Naples to perform for 15, 20 minutes in front of, so there's a lot of expenses, right? So I have paid to play a ton, right? But it's strategic. It's extremely strategic. So here's the deal. If you want to get out of the bars, you find one of these conferences and you get a 20-minute slot to perform in front of 200 or 300 or 400 or 500 people that they run fairs, festivals, and city events in your state. Okay? So, like I said, I've been doing that for 8 years or so. Past 2 years with my booking agency, I have had other acts come in that I represent, and I have paid for them to play, and they've paid their travel expenses and everything. And that, in a nutshell, is how you get out of the bars and onto the big stages.
You brought up something that I'm going to take even a step further. And that is, I get asked often, well, how can I get on a big tour? Okay, well, it's remember that art of networking and the communication skills? There's also a certain component there that a lot of artists don't understand. And that is some of those support acts, some of those opening acts, they're paying to be on that tour.
Yep.
I don't care if it's being indicated that, well, I'm paying for my ride on the bus, or I'm paying for my sound, my use of their sound system or their lighting system. You're paying to get that opening slot.
Right.
But it's putting you in front of how many butts and how many seats that you couldn't accomplish in a bar or a honky-tonk.
Yeah, and I've done that a bunch of times in a different way. I've done so. I've always said, like, if Garth Brooks's camp, called me and said, "Hey Tim, do you want to open for us in Wisconsin, and it doesn't pay anything, or it's going to cost you a couple grand?" I say, "Yeah, what's the date?" Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Of course I would do that.
You would be foolish to turn something like that down.
Of course. Absolutely. So this is what I've done. And this is just how you gain the most important thing in your career, which is momentum. I taught myself how to sing the national anthem and play the national anthem. Nowhere near as good as Chris Stapleton, but there were a few venues that asked me if I would sing the national anthem, and for the first one was, I believe, Charlie Daniels, which I ended up opening for Charlie Daniels like 10, 12 times after that. And all of it came about because I went and did the national anthem a few times at some big venues for free, and I ended up, had to pay. It wasn't a lot. Some of them were a lot, but some of them were, I had to pay $200 to travel. And at that point in my career, I wasn't opening for anybody else. So it was all about, I'm going to go do this. It's going to cost me a little bit, but then it's going to, you open for Charlie Daniels. Okay. And then that all led to me getting to open for Bret Michaels of Poison with my band, because it was the same venue. They were very, happy that I did it for free, the national anthem. Then the next year they had me open full band for Jerry Jeff Walker. And then the next year they had me open for Bret Michaels of Poison. And that one show, because of course I took the video and the photos and put them out everywhere and put it on my website and in my press kit, everything started to explode after that.
In the studio with us here today in Nashville, Tennessee, Tim Charron.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Tim Charron is sitting across the podcast table. Let's go down a couple different directions.
Yeah.
We talked about LinkedIn earlier. And I noticed that you had posted something about acting in a television commercial spot for Yamaha.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you're acting too.
Yes, I am. Oh boy, let me try to make this a quick and concise story. I used to, years ago, I did some acting and some small stuff. Did a few national commercials, did Dewar's Scotch, and did a big commercial for Visa MasterCard for the World Cup, and a few very, very small roles in films and some extra work. So the past 10 years, 12 years or so, I've been building my music career, but I've been started having health issues. So they're kind of progressively getting worse, and then the pandemic hit, and things just got worse and worse and worse. So long story long, last maybe it was like 14 months ago, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Lyme disease, but Shania Twain, that's what derailed her whole career. Justin Bieber had Lyme disease. Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates, Lyme disease. So a lot of people. And so what I'm trying to say is I literally thought for about 4 months that I was dying. Because I didn't know what was going on. And I got to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. I had to cancel my whole life. I had to cancel everything. I had all these shows. I had to cancel them. So I forced many, many doctors to help me get a diagnosis, Lyme disease. Started getting treated and started feeling better. And it's amazing what feeling like you're going to die will do for you. So I was like, I literally thought that I kept thinking like, oh my God, what if I can't ever perform? What am I going to do? What am I going to do for a living? What am I going to do? So when I started coming out of that, I was like, why don't I start acting again? It's something that I liked when I was doing it before. And I thought that, let me give it a shot and see if it clicks with me. So I did. I got headshots done. I started, just putting it on, my business thing to do. Like, and I submitted everything myself. Like I'm still self-represented. So the first thing that I got was that Yamaha commercial. It's a national Yamaha commercial, and I can't say it was very top secret. Actually, it was pretty cool. But we spent 8 days in the mountains driving these crazy 4x4 things with professional stunt drivers. I mean, it was the best 8 days I've had in a long time.
Wow.
And from there, it's just blown up. It's, I've done a bunch of commercials, done a lot of music videos. I was in, Ellie King.
Yes. Yeah.
I was in her last music video with a rapper named Dax. I played Ella's boyfriend / one night stand.
Yeah.
So
the love interest.
Yeah. So I basically, got paid to lay in bed with her, which is, it was great.
You don't hear that too often on this show, folks.
No. So I'm shooting another one, tomorrow. I start tomorrow, up here in Nashville. And in January, I shot my, I had a great role in a feature film, called The Truth About Monsters. And so look out for that on streaming, and had a nice co-starring role, and it's been amazing. It's been, and I think when I did it when I was younger, I had a lot of those filters, Yeah. Like I had a lot of self-consciousness, and I think that now, having all these years and experience on stage, that for performing, my philosophy is the less you think and the less you're thinking about yourself, the more you think about the audience, but really the less you're actually thinking, the better. And so I just took that same approach to acting, and my insane way of over preparing for performances. I took that same thing to acting in film, and that combination of being so prepared that you don't think, and you're not thinking about yourself or how you look or how you sound. You know, if you know your material, then it frees you to perform on a stage in front of 10,000 people opening for Big and Rich or whatever, or when the cameras roll and you're on a set, on a movie set. If you know without a shadow of a doubt what your material is, and it frees you, you don't think.
I'm so glad you said that, because there is a difference between performing live on stage and performing in front of a camera.
Oh, yes.
It is totally a different thing. And the camera does things. It to me, it becomes very intimidating, inhibiting. I was involved on a film project about a year ago that I got to spend a little bit of time in front of the camera, not behind the camera, because usually I'm behind the camera. And I would have to say, if it hadn't been for all of these webcasts that we've done on the Business Side of Music podcast, I probably would have had the deer in the headlight Rose look.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, there's nothing wrong. I guess my point is, there's nothing wrong with being over prepared. Because especially live on stage or in front of a camera, you basically get one shot to get it right.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know you can do take after take after take on camera, but the director and the producers after a while are going to go, yeah, this isn't working out.
Exactly.
Or this is great.
Yeah. I mean, when you're on a film set, it is very much about the cast and the crew and what they're thinking of you, you know. And I got a great compliment. It was very nice. Some of the crew came out to one of my concerts, and one of them said, you know, just gave me the ultimate compliment. He was like, you know, you're a great actor. He was like, you were just extremely professional and very well prepared. And that to me is the ultimate compliment, because I prepare like a psychopath. And that's what I would advise other people to do. And I hire musicians and fire musicians, you know, all day, every day, because I, you know, do all these shows.
Well, and you've set a bar to be at a certain standard, and you expect that much, I would assume.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you know, I said, I expect everyone to be over prepared. Don't even come in prepared. Come in over prepared. And then everything, it's so simple. It's so simple. It just makes your life so much easier. No matter what you're doing, if you are over prepared, then that's where confidence comes from. And that's where freedom comes from. You know, if you're up on stage, if you're a guitar player or something, and you're coming into audition, or you're coming into rehearse, or you're on stage and you're thinking, oh geez, I don't really know the next song. Like, you know, you're asking the bass player what the chord, like, to me, that's the ultimate, just anxiety. I don't want to put myself through that. I would never want to put myself through that. As long as I know what I'm getting myself into, you know, I would never go to a movie set and having had the script 4 months before, because that's mean to myself.
Yeah.
And it's mean to the cast and crew.
Yeah, to everybody else.
They're going to hate you, but it's just mean to do to yourself. Don't let yourself be put in that situation.
Before you leave, you have a booking agency too.
Yeah.
That is something I got to tell you, because I used to work for a booking agent in Hollywood many, many, many years ago in the mid to late 80s. And I think outside of maybe working in a restaurant, booking agents, that's got to be the toughest gig in the world ever. What made you go down that path?
Well, it's been a very crazy path, because how can I answer this? So I'm a very avid reader. And so to answer your question, I hated booking shows so much. Like I think 99% of artists do. I hated it. I hated everything about it. Nobody likes rejection. And when you're calling someone to book a show and they say no, they're rejecting you, it hurts.
Yeah.
But I read a book by Stephen Chandler called The Wealth Warrior, and it's kind of a self-improvement book. And I read it maybe 20 times, And then one time I was trying to, I was booking myself and just making myself do it, but I hated it. My wife and I used to get in arguments all the time because I would ask her to help me, and she hated it. I mean, it was a big problem. So the 20th or 30th time I read this chapter in this book, essentially Stephen Chandler says, either you learn to sell what you're trying to do or quit. Because if you cannot sell your product, which is you at the time, if you're an artist, then give up. And I'm not saying that for everybody else out there. I'm just saying it hit me like, oh my God, he's right. So I decided that I was going to become really great at it. And I worked my butt off. And then on the other side of it, then it started to become fun. Once I really put like everything into it and not half doing it because I didn't like it. And then I started getting success, momentum, success. So these years later, now I love it. I love it. So I was like, let me do this for other people.
I was going to say, because you have other artists on your roster now and some pretty good names.
Yeah. We just wrapped up. We're doing the city of Miami Beach is putting on and this all comes from actually in Coral Gables, Florida. In 2020, they have a big festival called Carnival, and they've been doing it for over 25 years. And so in 2020, they decided to have a country stage. They asked us to headline the Saturday night. So it was the last thing that was down there that was open. It almost closed because of the pandemic. And then the next week they had another event, and that was shut down. So we had. It was incredible. We had an amazing night, thousands of people, and everybody who likes country music around in Miami, because there's not much country music in Miami, all came, and they just had such a great time. It was such a great show. So now the city of Miami Beach has contracted them to do the same show, 3 stages, in a big country stage right on Ocean Drive, March 17th, 18th, and 19th, and so they all contacted my agency, and so we have booked the country stage for the whole weekend, all of the regional acts, and we're tying up. Do you know Craig Campbell?
Yes.
Yep. So we have Craig Campbell headlining on Friday, and the Swan Brothers are going to headline on Saturday.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And of course, I'm playing every day, and so. Yeah, I'm doing stuff with. I'm working on doing some stuff with Joe Nichols, getting him some dates, and I've already done some stuff with Trent Tomlinson. So, yeah, it's great. It's a lot of work. I've already hired one assistant. I'm hiring another assistant. My idea is to scale this so that I don't have to be in the weeds. But
this is what makes you that business entrepreneur. And prepare like a psychopath. Okay, so last but not least, how can people find out about Tim Charron? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, it's very simple. TimCharron.com, TimCharron.com. And I'm on the social media platforms. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Tim Charron Band on Facebook. And I like to tell everybody, I answer all of my own messages. So if you message me, it'll be me answering you. So send me a message. Let me know if you got anything out of this, or if you disagree with anything, and we'll have a spirited conversation.
The pay to play?
That's the one I didn't want to say it.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come in and be in the studio.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.